Where have all our lesbians gone?
What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Grab your crucifixes, your holy Bibles, your wooden stakes, anything that you have to fight against vampires, alongside this guy himself. Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter is a B horror movie from 2001. I don't even remember how I came across it or what parts of YouTube I was traversing to find it, but I am so glad that I watched it. And I want to share it with you guys. So we're going to be doing a play-by-play of the movie so that I can show you its funny, weird, interesting, offensive, and sometimes progressive parts of the movie. It's just so fascinating because it somehow juggles all of these things at one time. And I don't know how much of it is intentional or not. So today I will be showing it to you, and you can tell me how much you think is intentional. Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter is a Canadian B movie directed by Lee DeMarbre and written by Ian Driscoll. It was made over a 2-year period but released in 2001, and it received an honorable mention for the Spirit of Sundance at the 2002 Sundance Festival. So we're going to do a play-by-play and see exactly what this movie's all about. The movie first opens up hooking the audiences with splices of preachers and desperate atheists calling out and screaming to God, on top of shots of a Canadian suburban landscape and protesters. From there, we are then introduced to this random preacher character that I think is supposed to be like a modern parody of John the Baptist, who in the Bible is described as like this crazy guy screaming in the desert. He beckons the audience inside of the house, and it's used as like a metaphor for your soul and the story of the movie. Don't expect too much out of this movie, okay? Like, don't think about it too hard. That's the best way that you're gonna enjoy this. We then get an introduction of the cast and crew through credits over a very silly intro song. From here, we meet our main antagonist, Maxine Schreck, stalking a woman late after her night shift. It's from here that I'm gonna start something called the male gazy lesbian counter, and it goes for scenes or shots that show lesbians doing kind of male gazy things. Oh, also trigger warning for blood, gore, guts, that will be in this movie. Yes, they are low budget and low quality, but they can still be icky at times. Maxine then feasts on this innocent girl, and she's a lesbian, so we know she's the villain. We then get to one of the most famous lines of the movie within the first 5 minutes.
Where have all our lesbians gone?
And it's what immediately hooked me. We then meet Father Alban and another priest. I don't know his name, don't get too attached to these characters. Yes, that punk-looking guy, that is a priest. They come together to discuss the phenomenon of missing lesbians around the Ottawa area. Despite the bad guy being a predatory lesbian, which is a common lesbian trope in media, this film still wants you to know that they're not trying to pass judgment on queers with lines like this one.
We can no longer stand idly by and allow these children of God to be slain by these agents of the devil.
When I see a movie that has a predatory lesbian as the main bad guy, red flags sort of come up for me. But as you'll see throughout the movie, it really is trying to be evidently pro-LGBT while also playing into harmful tropes about LGBT people here and there. And it reads less as homophobic to me and more of just ignorant LGBT ally trying their best, or I don't know, ignorant queer people writing a movie just to laugh at each other and themselves. I'm not really sure. Also to note throughout this movie that you'll notice the audio is not layered on top of the visuals correctly, and this kind of lends to that B-movie magic. Why is it dubbed over? I have no idea. The priests then decide that the vampire situation has become so dire that they must seek out Jesus himself, who's just vibing in a random river in Canada for some reason. He's just baptizing someone over there and just drops them when the priests show up. It also kind of just shows the directorial oversights that make you wonder if the actors and the director are just that amateur, or if a lot of the amateurness is played up for laughs. It kind of skirts that line expertly, so I really am not sure. As the priests are explaining the dire situation to Jesus, the vampires come right up to Jesus, commencing our very first action scene. Sometimes B-movies, for me, can run the risk of having kind of boring fight scenes where they're just kind of dull or they're slow and at best can be hilariously terrible. And this movie also skirts that line as well, but it's very slapsticky. It's poorly choreographed. It's poorly edited, but it is so highly creative with some of the slapstick comedy in the action that I can't just help but love it. They're heavily inspired by kung fu style movies, which I think was thanks to the popularity of something like The Matrix at the time that this movie came out. And to be honest, I don't really know how to explain this, but I feel like there are some influences of The Matrix that show in this movie. Aside from like the cheesy, campy kung fu style action, also just some of the wardrobe screams very Matrixy to me. And if you don't see it, I really don't blame you for that, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. What can make the action scenes so much fun to watch is like the silly punching sound effects and the slowdown effects that we get in the editing. And some of the punches and kicks don't even land on the actors. Once again, it makes you wonder how much of that B-moviness is intentional or not. Well, if you like Father Alban and that other priest, that's too bad. They're dead now. And Jesus doesn't even notice until he's done spinning and throwing another vampire into the river. Jesus decides the situation has become dire enough that he must enter the fray. And I don't know what this song is playing here over the motorcycle sequence, but the musical choices in this movie are just so excellent. They're just so unapologetically cheesy.
Hebrews, James, Peter, John. Revelation!
Oh yeah, did I mention this movie's a musical?
I'm out on the street now, I'm out on the town. So many people just hanging around.
I love during this song how there are shots of like the actors are just like seemingly random people off the street that they ask to recite these lines. Like it just gives a very like fun atmosphere to the scene. Also, canonically, Jesus be a short king. They say so in the song, so you can't argue with me.
And you're not very tall. You could be setting us up for a wall. You say that you're wounded. To that I say fine. If you show me yours, then I'll show you mine.
Also, West Side Story reference. Shots like this make me wonder truly how low budget the movie was. They have all of these actors at their disposal. There had to be at least some kind of good budget going on here. Unless they were just friends with like really nice volunteers, I don't know. We are now introduced to Father Eustace, who comes to pick up Jesus and let him stay with him. We then get our first Batman-esque sequence. Do you see why I love this movie so much? Father Eustace explains that the Catholic Church has stayed out of the local disappearances due to most of the victims being lesbian. Once again, the movie shows its alliedness via Jesus's line here.
There have been more disappearances? Many. As recently as last night. Young women mostly. The church has been unwilling to act on this matter because of the lifestyle of these women. The church should learn to leave judgment to higher powers.
Also while being at Straight Hooters. While returning to the store to get wood stakes to kill the vampires, an action scene commences, and we get the second funniest line in the movie.
Hello, Jesus. You don't know us because we've never talked to you before. We are the Atheists.
Followed by the third funniest line.
Look, Jesus, we're taking your second coming as down. Consider this the 13th station of the cross.
Let's get on with the conversions.
So why are the atheists fighting Jesus? No, I promise you this doesn't come up in any other part of the movie. It's just a self-indulgent, funny action scene that goes on for 5 minutes. I don't know, I guess action movie when an action movie. Also clown car atheists. And Kung Fu Man arrives, and I don't know why, but I love how cartoony this shot is. And then the main atheists enter the fray. Once the action scene is over, Jesus kind of just walks over the pile of bodies that he just bodied, and goes on his merry way. We are then introduced to Jesus' sidekick, Mary Magdalene. If we're going to compare this movie to The Matrix, Mary Magdalene is like the Trinity to this movie, but instead of Trinity being cool and chill, she's like flirtatious and goofy. She subsequently kicks Jesus' butt because, I don't know, action movie woman's supposed to be cool. And Jesus tells her that he's a little stressed out having mistaken her for a vampire. So her solution? Put Jesus in a sauna and flirt with him for some reason. This character is supposed to be a modern parody of Mary Magdalene, who notoriously has been characterized as Jesus' side hoe historically. And in this movie, they sort of lean into that stereotype. For the few Christians who have stuck around to watch this movie, rest assured that Jesus is pretty much neutral to any flirtatious behavior of any women in this movie. Because yes, women are often flirtatious with him for some reason. Mary then explains that she's part of a fringe part of the church that allows women to be in higher positions, commenting on the lack of power that many women have in the church. Once again, a progressive thought from the writers of this movie, while simultaneously writing them in very sexist roles throughout. A weird but interesting dichotomy that makes me even more intrigued by this movie. We're also told in this scene that the vampires in this movie have a type of fungal infection. Because yes, this movie is somewhat interested in its lore, when acknowledging previously that the vampires are daywalkers. The attention to lore consistencies makes me think that the writing is somewhat competent, but once again makes me wonder how much of the amateurness of the movie is intentional and how much isn't. So Mary and Jesus go to a clothing store to get new clothes, and we get the obligatory 2000s movie wardrobe compilation. While shopping, Maxine, the vampire, arrives to talk to the store clerk. Mary and Jesus hide until she leaves, beginning to slowly follow her to a nearby parking garage to see what she's up to. Jesus decides to follow her down into the vents.
If we're not back in 5 minutes, call the Pope.
We are then revealed to this scientist character that I'm not really sure if it's supposed to be one of the guys who went missing previously or not, but regardless, he's now a crazy scientist man, whoever he is. And it's revealed to how the bad guys are making these lesbians into vampires. All while he goes through this dialogue about religious, science, mumbo-jumbo. And he's also a cannibal. So much so that even the other vampires are grossed out by him.
Doc.
Also, lines like this.
Give me a call when you're done with her body work. Whoa, speaking of body work, hey Max, how'd you find me?
Follow the screams, Johnny, just like always.
Why?
Wow, who's that?
She's a vampire.
Oh, too bad.
I saw her kill 2 priests with my own eyes.
Maxine and her vampire friend go to the lesbian drop center, whatever that is, and decide to have a treat. This poor lady walks in to find the lesbians all eaten and stuff, and screaming for like way too long. Also, male gazy lesbian shot number 2. I have no idea what's going on here. The vampires escape via a very clever tactic.
Hey, you want to play a game?
Sure.
Close your eyes. You're it.
Jesus and Mary then follow the vampires up to the roof, and Mary gets thirsty for Maxine again with a classic lesbian pickup line.
I love what you're wearing.
Male gazy lesbian shot number 3. Oh hey look, John the Baptist is back.
A question will arise within you. This same question did a certain lawyer ask of our Lord in Luke 10:30. Who is my neighbor?
Jesus and Mary Magdalene are defeated by the vampires, and Jesus is left to wander the streets injured. We get something parodying the Bible story where people are passing up a guy who's dying on the side of the road, and they pass him up, as Jesus is injured and on the side of the road. Jesus asks for help from a priest and a police officer who both pass him up. Once again, I think quite a compelling scene, despite the cartoonishy way that it's portrayed. Nonetheless, the one who does end up coming along to help him is a trans woman, I think, or at the very least supposed to be a cross-dresser. The movie never really identifies who they're supposed to be, but we know that it's a queer person. The queer person is the one that shows compassion and goes over to Jesus to help him, even if their dialogue is silly and riddled with some harmful tropes and stereotypes. This is another great example of what I mean when the movie can be both progressive in one breath and then offensive in another. I'm not a trans woman, but I can understand how trans viewers could see a character like this uncomfortable or offensive. I also can't help but feel like the intent for a character like this is to be played with a little bit of earnestness while also being played for laughs. And the earnestness doesn't really balance out the excuses of harmful tropes, but I think it's still worth noting. This character nurses Jesus back to health.
Good night, sweet prince.
Before he begins to prepare his wooden stakes to hunt down the vampires who attacked him and Mary Magnum. Despondent, Jesus gets to go have food at a local diner, and one of the funniest scenes in this movie happens.
Jesus. Is that you, bowl of cherries? Do bowls of cherries talk, Jesus? I don't know. I've seen a lot of strange things over the years. You need help, Jesus, and I have not forsaken you. Oh, it's you, Dad. So what's your advice?
God tells Jesus to go find El Santo, a Mexican luchador, to help him fight the vampires. Why? I don't know. Also, I love how they do this kind of thing when depicting Jesus, like the call your mother line.
And call your mom. She misses you.
I don't know, it just makes him so like human and relatable. It's funny. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. So Jesus goes to find El Santo, and he is surrounded by paparazzi, not even noticing that literally Jesus Christ is right there. Jesus and El Santo go and get some information out of the store clerk from before, who's friends with Maxine the vampire. They find out that there's going to be a showdown. Why is there going to be a showdown? I don't know, because the movie needs a climax. We get our second and last musical number from a guy who's supposed to be a blind leper or something.
But the man you're here to see can't see you. So make some noise for Mr. Blind Jimmy Leper!
Thank you very much. Thank
you. But it happens at a bar where, oh look, another lesbian shot for the men. Counter number 4.
Jesus, I'm afraid I must confess the sin of lust. Don't worry, Santos, he forgives all.
Anyway, the blind leper calls Jesus up onto the stage to sing.
1, 2, 3. I was born in a manger. Doomed to live in danger.
And while looking in the mirror behind the stage, Jesus notices that the only reflections he can see are of himself, Santos, and Santos' assistant. So that can only mean one thing. The room is full of vampires. So what does Jesus do? He jumps on the drum set, plays a song on the drums, and then uses the drumsticks to kill vampires. This kind of fight choreography is ridiculously funny. Come on. Maxine appears and blows some kind of passing out dust in Santos' face. And while Jesus is distracted fighting the other vampires, they take Santos and his assistant away, leaving Jesus to have to flee from the bar. Jesus' mother, Mary, decides to give him a call to give him some encouraging words.
Hello, son. I was just wanting to check up on you. Are you keeping busy then, dear?
Yeah, Mom. I'm trying to help some lesbians.
Oh, God love them. They get so much done in a day, don't you think?
Yeah, listen, I really have to go. These vampires
Now you're not letting those boys push you around, are you? They might seem bigger than you now, but who do we always say is going to inherit the earth, dear?
The meek, Mom.
That's right, love. Now don't let me keep you. You go on now.
Okay, Mom. Talk to you later. I love you.
Just as Jesus is about to leave to hunt down more vampires, some guests arrive. Mary Magnum with Maxine and the other vampire. She's turned into a vampire and is now turned against Jesus for some reason. Anyway, they tell him that they have Santos, and if he ever wants to see him alive again, he has to come with them. Jesus shows up to see Santos and his assistant tied up in chains, as well as to see Father Eustace, who has now become a vampire. Fully trapped now, they tie Jesus up by chains and some cars in order to kill him, I guess.
You really haven't done anything that they haven't, my lord. You rose from the dead, so did they. You promised eternal life, so did they. But they offer so much more power.
I really wish we'd had the time to invite more people, Jesus. It's not every day a guy gets a chance to commit deicide. Sacrifice is your thing, isn't it?
I think you need to go back to Sunday school. My death was never the end of the story. I've got a question, though. Why lesbians?
They're deviants. No one will miss them.
There's nothing deviant about love.
Ha! Good one. The truth is as bitter as garlic to them.
As they're trying to kill Jesus, Santos breaks free and tries to break Maxine's back with one of those wrestler maneuver things. He frees Jesus and they duke it out with the vampires. Again. Mary shows up on a motorcycle while a group of reporters show up to film the scene, because why not? We then cut to the scientist who is watching the scene via the news, and Jesus shows up in his room. Yada yada yada, more fight scenes. Oh look, he's gonna use that lady's guts as some nunchucks, that's funny. Slapstick fighting, yada yada, Jesus gets stabbed, and somehow that defeats the scientist guy? I don't know. Santos then asks Jesus to heal one of the vampires that Santos has like grown a thing for or something, and Jesus says, oh, I can heal her, but I can heal her through your love, or something. At the same time, Jesus kisses Mary's motorcycle helmet and cures her of being a vampire. Why he hasn't done this for everyone else, I have no idea. The first thing Mary does when she wakes up is confess her love for Maxine the vampire. So she asks him to heal her.
Rabbi, I owe you so much already. The peace in my soul. Maxine, she brings me a joy that I never thought possible here on Earth. I was wondering, could you?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
So she's healed and they're making out again. Lesbian encounter number 5. Santos scores with the healed vampire lady, and she tells him that...
But Maggie, aren't you a lesbian?
No, I'm bi.
Yes! Yes! Ha ha! Yes! Yes!
John the Baptist wraps up the movie saying some biblical-sounding shit about love. Jesus gives a final speech of the movie, urging Christians to think for themselves or something. And then we end with the crowd cheering, yay! So here's the thing. I can't really tell if this movie is made by really cool fringe Christians or by really goofy queer goth punks. And that's what I love about it so much. As far as I can tell, the director went to Catholic high school, so he may fall into the latter category with a lot of information about Catholicism. But truly, I think even if I had watched this when I was a Christian, I would have been able to laugh at it. At least I would hope so. To me, this movie feels like The Matrix if Neo wasn't a Christ-like figure, but he was Christ himself. And also the entire Matrix itself didn't exist, but the agents were still the villains, and they were atheists and lesbian vampires. It's got kung fu. It's got campy humor. It's got the outfits. I think what fascinates me so much about this movie is how it simultaneously skirts 2 lines. One being that B-movie line, where you can't really tell how much of it is truly amateurish and how much is intentional. And then you have this other line where you can't really tell if the offensive jokes are on purpose or just ignorance. And you can tell they want to be supportive of, like, queer people and stuff, but then they also fall into, like, these sexist and like almost homophobic, transphobic tropes. But at the end of the day, you can tell or at least I would hope that the intention is a good one. And whether or not it's intentionally trying to be amateurish or not, I love it. If it's intentional, they did it expertly. And if it's not intentional, they still created a fun and earnest movie to watch. Honestly, I would say go watch the movie for yourself, especially with some friends. That's super fun. Just, you know, relax your mind. Don't think about it too much. Just laugh, you know, let loose. But really, I would like to know what you think. There really aren't too many YouTube videos about this movie on the internet, and not too much dialogue about it that I could find personally. So I'd love to hear what you think about it, even if you don't watch it, even just based off of the cliff notes that I gave you. Thank you for watching.